with the special operations community, with the pace of deployments and the op tempo, as well as I think with police officers, there's kind of a similar thing there in terms of the elasticity that's required to go between two worlds that have a really different set of rules, just a whole different set of assumptions and a different culture. But what's interesting is that you have been part of both worlds, with Tom. And so you've played a role in his healing. And part of your message is that spouses suffer too, and that secondary PTS is a real thing, and that people are deserving of care and attention. I'd love to give you an opportunity and a platform to share some of what's on your heart on that.
I'm so glad you did, because it's a huge, huge part of my heart. I used to say, put on your oxygen mask, because when you put on your oxygen mask, you're there to help other people in such more of a meaningful and present way. But now I've scratched that and said, put on your oxygen mask just because you deserve to have your oxygen mask on. Whatever you do with it, you do with it. But you are worthy. You are deserving enough to get the help that you need. Secondary PTS, Tom and I go around the country, speak at bases, we speak at posts. We always ask, who's heard of secondary? And we get one hand most often out of hundreds. Yeah. People don't even know it's a thing. They don't even know how war affects them in the home. They don't even know that the soldier's bringing it in, whether they want to or not. Most often it's not a deliberate thing. Or spouses will say, listen, I don't act like my spouse acts, so there's no way I have secondary PTS. It shows up differently for us spouses most often than it does our spouse. So it might not look like my PTS in secondary. It doesn't look like Tom's. And so that becomes very difficult for people to diagnose or treat. And the relief I see on the spouse's face when I say, it's not your fault. This is what's going on with you. And it's an injury. We can get to the other side of it too. Shoulders drop, tears fall, because everybody wants to have a good life. Everybody wants to live joyfully. And we just need help sometimes getting there.
Such a hopeful message. How do you think it shows up differently in spouses from what you've observed?
Most often what we hear and what I personally experienced was depression and anxiety. Those things seem to rise up really high. And so I'll have spouses call that say, I'm on anti-anxiety meds and I've never had anxiety issues in my entire life, or I've never really battled depression. I don't know why I can't shake this, or why I'm isolating from family or friends, or why I'm stopping, doing the things that I normally love to do. I don't find joy in them anymore. And so it shows up a little bit differently. It looks a little bit differently than the typical soldier or service member response, which could be, I see a lot of anger, I see violence, or I see aggression or perfectionism. So just because the symptoms or the signs look differently doesn't mean that it's not present.
Absolutely. It's such an important message. And, if you live with someone who's waking up in the middle of the night, who's getting flooded with anxiety, it becomes a pretty unpredictable home environment for everybody. And that can lead to those feelings of anxiety and depression for other people in the family, to include children, as well as spouses. So the deservingness is also a key thing I really want to highlight, because I think sometimes in the military community, spouses are kind of seen as attached to, the service member. And so it's really important to be very intentional about that message of, you deserve the care. Can you say anything else you really want people to hear based on your experience?
I absolutely feel that our service spouses and families also serve this country. They are an integral part of this nation. And when I thank a spouse for their service, which I do every time, they're totally taken off guard. They try to pass it off to, that's what my husband or that's what my wife does. No, you serve too. You have sacrificed for this country. You're the backbone of this country. You are deserving of help. You are deserving of every bit of self-care, because you have given so much, not only to your spouse, but to this nation. You deserve it. Absolutely. 100%.
100% agree, as and
Yes.
Thank you for being a voice of hope for the community. You're somebody with so much credibility as somebody within the community, as a spouse of an operator.